And good afternoon. I'm Jack Fink, political reporter here at CBS 11 in Dallas, Fort Worth. And welcome to our Facebook Live. Early voting continues, and Election Day is 1 week away from today. Who can believe it? People are getting out and voting. And today we are releasing our final CBS 11 Dixie Strategies Texas poll. We're excited to show you all the results. We've got a great panel here in our studio, as always. Starting in the back today, on the left, Brian Graham of Dixie Strategies. You are a pollster. You did the poll, so thank you very much for joining us. Deborah Peoples, the chair of the Tarrant County Democrat Party. Rich D. Ott, former vice chair of the Tarrant County Republican Party. Down in front, Karen Watson, vice chair of the Dallas County Republican Party, and Carol Donovan, chair of the Dallas County Democrat Party. And of course, we want to hear from all of you on Facebook. Let us know what you're thinking, respond to our poll. And joining me to help with the questions and comments is Aparna Zalani, our producer extraordinaire. So thank you, Aparna, and thank you all at home. First, let's go right through our poll. We want to start with the Texas Senate race, which is really the exciting race here in Texas. It's gotten a lot of national attention, so let's put the first one up on the board. We can show you. Ted Cruz has a 10-point lead in our poll, 52 to 42%. Undecided are 5%. Moving on to the governor's race, we can show you that Greg Abbott has a 26-point lead, according to our poll, 59% over Democrat former Dallas County Sheriff Lupe Valdez at 33%, 7% undecided. And moving on, we are now going to look and see where President Trump is in Texas. His favorable rating, 56%, unfavorable, 41%, undecided, 3%. And then moving on to the down ballot, but still statewide races, this is for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick at 51%, Democrat Mike Collier at 40%, 8% undecided. And then for our Texas Attorney General's race, Ken Paxton at 50%, Democrat Justin Nelson at 41%, 8% are undecided. And then in our final race that we surveyed Texas voters, George P. Bush at 52%, Democrat Miguel Suazo at 36%, 9% undecided. And I should mention our breakdown. We had 588 Texas likely voters, and our breakdown from that is 253 Republicans, 223 Democrats, and 112 independents. And so I want to start with Brian. Let's go back to the Senate race. Talk us through this. This is now a 10-point lead for Senator Cruz. And we have last month's numbers that we can show as well. When we did the survey right after Labor Day, that was a tight race back then. It was 4 points, and now we've gone to 10. So talk us through this.
Well, when we did our poll, the previous poll, Senator Cruz obviously had several issues that we had discussed and gone over. His numbers were not as good as they should have been in a state like Texas, and the race was far too close. As we see now, he has widened his lead, and a lot of that is probably because of the president and the political environment. The president's approval numbers have gone up since we last had this discussion. He has obviously been to Texas. He's supported Ted Cruz now publicly and rallied with him. There's a lot of publicity around that. Ted Cruz has also started to spend money, which prior to that he had really not spent much or had been advertising too much. And Beto had been spending a lot prior to that. So I think that what you're seeing is pretty standard for what the environment was then and what the environment is now. It's very arguably a better environment now for Republicans than it was prior to Kavanaugh and the caravan coming up through Central America.
Deborah.
Okay, so Brian and I have this discussion, and we've had it before. It's likely voters. And so I've always said, if it's likely voters, we lose. But this election is not about likely voters. I mean, we have lots of voters who are coming out who didn't vote in the 2016 election. We have a lot of first-time voters. So I think the polls are misleading. I'm out there every day talking to people, and I don't see that 10-point spread. I think this race is going to be very close, come down to the wire, and I predict that Beto O'Rourke is our next senator.
Rich.
Well, I don't predict that same thing, and I like your poll. I'll say that. But seriously, the Republican Party in Texas hasn't laid down for this race at all. So we've been doing the same things we've been doing for years, beating the pavement, knocking on doors, and trying to persuade voters. And we're not taking this election for granted. Cruz has been ahead of Beto the whole race. Beto's spent, what is it, up to $70 million now, and he's gone from about 44 to 46% in one of the averages. So the Republican Party is dead serious about maintaining their position here. And it's not so much about who wins the race. We want a big win because the issues at stake are going to be keeping coming up. And we want to put a nail in that coffin.
Karen.
Yeah, I do like the polls. I'm not surprised by it. This is Texas. Texas is a conservative state. Conservative thought. That's the reason why we are bringing so many people from other states here, because we are a gem in the whole country, and we are a gem a lot because of our conservative values. So I'm not surprised about that. But, you know, we're going to win all the way. I agree that polls are not always exact, but I think this is an easy win for us. But we still have to stay engaged, work hard, get everybody to the poll. It's going to be turnout.
Carol.
Well, I do agree with one thing that Karen said. It's going to be about turnout. And we have not seen the kind of Democratic turnout that we are seeing now in any primary until you get back to 2008. And I haven't seen the excitement that Democrats are showing about turning out. They are just waiting to vote. They're really excited about voting, and I haven't seen that excitement since 2008 when Barack Obama ran for the first time. This is a big deal. Our lines have been really huge, if I can borrow an adjective from the president. They're going out the door, down the block. It's a big deal, and people aren't leaving. I mean, they are excited about going in. So I think there's a lot going on. I think that Deborah Peoples is right on the mark when she says that this is not the likely voter. We have seen a lot more young voters coming out than we have ever seen before. And then we are also seeing just more volume.
All right, well, let's check in with Facebook. Aparna, any comments that stick out?
There are several comments. Sorry, I'm just trying to find them right now.
No problem.
But we have a few. Lisa says, who are you polling? Folks with landlines or folks with cell phones? Early voting exit polls? So she's just curious about who we are polling.
All right.
Gail Campbell says, is anyone else so tired of all the negative ad commercials on TV for people running for office? So that's her comment.
Okay.
There are many, many people who are Cruz supporters and many people who are Beto supporters. So they're going back and forth, quite a few people.
They're having their own debate.
Yes.
All right, well,
They're not even
we always like that. All right, Lisa and Gail, thank you so much. Brian, let answer Lisa's question as far as, you know, how we poll, and this is not a exit poll. This is a poll of likely voters, and this was done last Thursday and Friday, 25th and 26th. But what's the method? I mean, landlines, cell phones, online, what?
Well, first, I'd like to say I'm very glad that they are having the debates there on Facebook because we have nice discussions here. To answer your question regarding who we polled in this poll, the people that are polled, we use land and cell phones, a combination. These are likely voters, so these are people that have shown propensity to be voting in elections, in off-year elections. So that is the demographic that we have targeted for this poll. And then, of course, we have put the percentages of Republicans and Democrats and others who normally show up for elections. So, of course, that goes back to what Deborah was saying about turning out voters that have never turned out before. Certainly, if Democrats turn out more voters that are liberal, that have never voted before, that is very beneficial for them. Same thing goes for Republicans. If Republicans turn out conservatives who have never voted before, that helps them. That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump did so well and won the election to become president, because he turned out people that had never before voted for. In one of my clients' congressional districts, there were 30,000 people that had never voted before, and they showed up to vote in the 2016 presidential election. And so numbers like that are why you have a President Donald Trump, and numbers like that are why you can turn elections and change elections, which is what the Democrats and Beto are hoping for in Texas.
And let me say this, because last week, I mean, we've been covering both campaigns very extensively because it is such an exciting race. And when I was out covering Beto O'Rourke's move in Fort Worth, he went through a number of locations last week. I did meet, someone. This is a video that we're watching from one of the stops that he made. But I did meet somebody who was 37 years old, and this was the first time they were voting.
Wow.
And he had told me that Beto had inspired him to come out and vote for the first time. And I think, isn't the real magic question here in this race whether there are enough of these first-time voters or young voters who are Democrats who would vote for Beto? Are there enough of them to change the outcome of this race? Isn't that the key question?
Yes, and I believe that there are. So when I look at the margin of victory, and let's take Tarrant County, because Tarrant County has been solidly Republican for many years, but it's about a 54-46 margin, and we get better every year. There are many people coming out to vote who did not vote in 2016. That has to be troubling for Republicans, because if they didn't come out in 16, they didn't come out to vote for President Trump, or they didn't come out to vote for Hillary Clinton. So what's bringing them out now? And I don't believe it's Cruz that's bringing them out. I believe it's Beto O'Rourke.
Rich.
Well, there are some motivators to bring them out that don't necessarily have to do anything about with the candidates, namely Kavanaugh and the immigration. But my job today is to encourage somehow Republicans to take everything very seriously. There is a breakdown in their early vote that I noticed. On the first day of early voting, the pattern of voting between Democrats, Republicans, likely Republicans, and new people is pretty big. The first day of early voting, it matched 2014. But since then, there are about 10% of the voters, we don't know who they are. And that is a concern. Now, I believe it could be Republicans, but I think it's best on our side to take everything serious and get out the vote.
And here is another wrinkle, which I think is very interesting, because we don't know as far as, the age and all that. I mean, are young kids going to show up? And first of all, I mean, can we always assume that young people are going to vote Democrat all the time?
That's right.
No.
I mean, because young college Republicans, they're young college Democrats, et cetera. But here's the thing that I think really is unknown, because here in Texas, we have so many people who are moving in from California, from New York, maybe the Midwest, et cetera. And when people register to vote, they don't register by party in Texas. And so I'm wondering, is that a great unknown? And now in 2014, of course, we had people moving here, but they voted Republican, more so than they voted Democrat. It was a huge victory for Republicans in Texas. But who's to say now, right? Or am I wrong? Or, let's talk about that. Anybody want to chime in, Carol?
I'll chime in. It's always a mystery. You're always guessing about what it's going to be. So what we do is we stereotype. We stereotype the fact that most of the young voters tend to be Democrat, but not all of them are going to be Democrat. More women vote Democrat, more men vote Republican. So there's a lot of stereotypes that we're dealing here. Something that is not a stereotype that I haven't seen in a long time is the passion and the energy and the excitement that Democrats have about Beto O'Rourke. He doesn't have to get a president to come, to come campaign for him here in the state of Texas. He doesn't even have to have a celebrity to come campaign. We had a
Who's Willie Nelson?
We had well, that was down in Austin. We had a right here in Dallas,
Seriously,
which is
Carol's
generally
not being completely honest.
which is generally more conservative than Austin. We had a rock concert, a political rock concert, and Beto was the rock star, and 5,000 people showed up to see him.
But to Karen's point, I mean, he has had a lot of people online. I mean, I think the other day who was it who was wearing a Beto hat?
LeBron James.
LeBron James, right.
Yes.
He was wearing a Beto hat, and he was on Ellen. He's been on the late night shows.
Yeah,
So-
Beto's pulling Hollywood. He's
Stephen
that's
Colbert.
not honest.
Well, they love him.
Well, that's Hollywood, and that's the difference between Hollywood and Texas.
But
California is
Beto
different
is
than
not
Texas.
a Hollywood candidate. If you meet him,
Okay.
he is the most genuine, authentic person you've ever met. And so while I think it attracts stars to him like Willie Nelson, it also attracts everyday Texans. And so we are seeing this level of unbridled enthusiasm for this candidate that I agree with Carol that we have not seen in a candidate in years.
I think Beto ran a very good campaign, better than any Democrat that I've seen in a long time, and I don't take that away from him. I think that there were deficiencies in Ted Cruz's campaign. I think he should have gotten out a lot early. I think he should have defined Beto a lot earlier. And it was kind of like a match of strategies. But I think finally people are saying, especially with Kavanaugh, I mean, Kavanaugh is a big deal for most people, the way that was handled. And I think the caravan is also a big push for a lot of people saying, do we really want to have waves of people just trying to come through because they want to come through?
Well, Karen, I think your president wants the caravan to be a big deal. I think he wants the caravan to be a big deal. But I believe that there weren't just deficiencies in Ted Cruz's campaign. There are deficiencies in Ted Cruz that many, even Republicans, know. And so I just think Beto's going to pull it out.
All right, I want to move on to the governor's race. So let's go back and take a look at the polls, because there we see a 26-point advantage, So you've got Greg Abbott, 59%, Lupe Valdez at 33%, undecided. I don't know how anybody can still be undecided. How is that possible?
That's right.
But okay.
They just don't want to say.
Yeah.
And then if you look at last month, that's a big increase from what we saw last month. So last month, it was a 19-point lead that Governor Abbott had, 53 to 34 and 12% undecided. So let's talk about this race, because I think in this race, we have to look at Governor Abbott's coattails. Is that right? And the fact that he's very popular. Let's talk to Brian first about this, and then we'll go through the panel.
Well, Jack, we've done a lot of polls throughout the years, and you follow Texas politics better than almost any reporter in the state.
Well, I don't know about
And
that,
so,
but you're too kind. I wouldn't take credit for that. No.
Is he reading something?
My station is, so that's all right.
So we've had these discussions in the past about how we've always noticed how popular the governor is. He's always been popular. You've seen it firsthand, time and again. And he's a very popular figure, a very likable figure in the state. His numbers have always been enviable, particularly with Republicans. His independent numbers are very good for being a Republican governor, and then even his Democrat numbers are good. This guy just all across the board has great numbers. You combine great numbers with a lot of money raised and an opponent who has no money and little name ID, and that's why you come up with such a large margin here in the poll, because simply the governor's been on air, he's been campaigning, he's been spending millions, and Lupe has been virtually silent. And so that's why you see such a large margin. Now, even if Lupe did have money, I don't think she could beat the governor simply because his numbers are ahead and have always been steadily so good, which is why you probably see the Democrat Party not investing in that race and putting all of their eggs in the Beto O'Rourke basket, because that is who they have chosen as the candidate, which is a good messenger, by the way, as the candidate to turn out their base and excite their base and help down-ticket candidates. Abbott is absolutely the person who is going to help down-ticket in the state of Texas.
Does that include Senator Cruz?
I think it does. I think Abbott will help Cruz. I think the president helped Cruz a lot. I think you see his numbers coming up because of the president and because of Abbott. And there's also, party line voting. And the governor is going to have coattails all the way down the ballot because of party line voting and because people are coming to vote for this very popular governor.
So does that include Ken Paxton, who's been indicted?
It does include all the Republicans down ballot are going to be helped by straight
that was a
tickets.
political indictment. That wasn't a real indictment.
So let me just say this about Lupe. She doesn't have, so let me just say this about Lupe. She doesn't have a lot of money, but we've been running, the Democratic Party has been running, we've been running a grassroots campaign. It's door to door, voter by voter, phone call by phone call. Yes, but further than a bus tour, I walk every day. I walk in neighborhoods and talk to people. And so we've been campaigning vigorously for Lupe. She doesn't have the money, but that doesn't mean she's not going to get the votes.
Well, I think she's probably lacking a little bit in the devotion, though, because I remember in the Democrat primary race against Andrew White, I think, what did he take, 30-some percent? Yeah. And when a guy like Andrew White, who's a moderate Democrat, who was known for the church that he went to and his views, personal views on life, it's very interesting to me that the Democratic Party gave him that much of their vote, and I think there's an enthusiasm gap as a result.
Let me ask you this. How much of a bump is it possible that Beto O'Rourke can give the other Democrats down ballot? Because he has the money. He's been on the air. He's brought people out. He's excited people. He's gotten the crowds. So how much of that, how much of a Beto effect could there be with these other Democrats who are not on TV, who don't have the name recognition, who don't have the money, who don't engage people the way that he engages people? And we can ask everybody, and then I want to hear from Facebook, too.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and start since I was last time. I am amazed at not only at the enthusiasm for Beto, but also his all-encompassing wingspan of the Democratic Party. And I really do think that he is going to encourage the number of Democrats that are down ballot from him. A lot of Democrats, including Beto, are pushing the straight party message because they are tired of the Republican leadership. And I think there's something else, an effect, both in this race between Beto and Cruz and also in the governor's race. There's a factor that the Republicans themselves have mentioned, and that's the likability factor. You can't meet Beto without falling in love with him. I mean, he's just the genuine article, and everybody likes him. And I haven't ever met anybody who really likes Ted Cruz. I mean, they might vote for him because of the policies, but
no, I can't let that go. I can't let that go.
But
I have met Ted Cruz. I adore Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz has been a great servant for the state of Texas. There are people who adore Ted Cruz. So don't believe everything you read.
But not all of his Republican colleagues there in Washington.
Let me get Rich, and then I want to check in with Facebook.
Okay, so Beto O'Rourke in this poll is at 42%. On the average, when he started in June, he was at 42%. So I don't see a whole lot of extra enthusiasm there. I see traditional Democrat voters being enthusiastic about a candidate that doesn't embarrass them in front of people. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think there's anything new here. I think this enthusiasm that he's getting doesn't equal what Barack Obama brought to the Democrat Party.
Well, obviously you haven't been attending Beto rallies because if you did,
I have not.
I have a lot of people have used to me the same word. They say he is Kennedy-esque. There's just an enthusiasm about him. If you remember the reports when John Kennedy first ran for president, there were young folks that were so excited they were practically jumping up and down in the audience.
Let me ask, let's go to Facebook and check in with our folks there, and then I do have a question about this topic.
Okay. So Michael Warren says Greg Abbott is going to win by the biggest landslide ever in the governor's election. How much of these voters are going to vote for Beto? Hayden Spark says, I'm a young person, 21, who consistently turns out for Republicans. Not all 20-somethings are liberals. This is an interesting exchange. Beverly Robertson says, red all the way. Shalanda Lee says, uh-oh, they're getting a little feisty here, talking about you guys here, when you guys were talking.
Always feisty.
Jesse Sir Paradis is talking about Abbott. He says, she says, he's likable. His policies, not so much. Then Susie says Beto is clueless.
That's a lot of comments. All right, so
a lot of comments. Yeah.
Michael, Hayden, Beverly, Shalonda, Jesse, and Susie, thank you so much for your comments.
And then Francine really likes you, Rich.
And Francine. Okay. All right. All right. You got a new Facebook.
Happily married.
Yeah.
Love How are you?
So let me ask this question, because I think, this goes to Carol's point and I think a little Karen's point. And I think when we talked last month, when the poll came out, we saw the 4-point race, and we can put it up on the screen for everybody to see. This is the Senate race from September, when it was a 4-point race. I think O'Rourke had 42, and I think Senator Cruz had 46%. Then we were talking about the likability factor. We were talking about personality. There it is. And so now that we've seen this in our new poll, this is a 10-point race. I'm wondering, and Senator Cruz has said this at his rallies, that after Labor Day, people started focusing on the issues. And so how much of it is personality, because we still see a lot of excitement and a lot of people at O'Rourke's rallies, but at the same time, we've seen the polls go Cruz's way. And so I'm wondering, issues versus personality. That's part of it, right? And we're seeing that in the Senate race. Brian, I want to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll go around the room.
I want to congratulate Rich on having fans.
They love you too, Brian. They love you too.
I think Deborah and I deserve fans too, But
what do you think of this issue, personality versus issues?
So we had this discussion last time about Ted Cruz's personality, and I agreed with you that a lot of times Ted's personality is not necessarily the most exciting. And he's had this issue. I mean, it's been discussed on CNN and everywhere else when he was running for president, and it's been discussed throughout Texas. But we also had a discussion that I said that eventually the issues were going to come about. And we discussed Beto's ads. And in his ads, they were very, very warm, fuzzy. They were fluffy, but they never addressed the issues. And so eventually throughout this race, and I said this, I said for Ted Cruz to do better, he has to focus on these issues. And once he does, the paint will wear off the Beto car for a lot of voters who either don't know him or are undecided in the race, and they're going to end up going back home to Ted Cruz simply because of the issues. Pro-life, pro-gun, immigration, you name it. Those issues are, Texas is a conservative state, and voters that have consistently voted in Texas tend to vote conservatively, which goes back to Deborah's point about new voters. That's how Democrats, that's what they need if they're going to win. They have to have new voters. Because arguably the voters who have always voted in Texas are conservative. I mean, you can see that at the state level, you can see it on the federal level, clearly a conservative state. So I think what's happened here, more so than Ted changing his likability or any of that, what's happened is Republicans have coalesced around Ted Cruz, and the issues have started to become something that's real. And I think Kavanaugh and all these other issues that have happened have really pushed the issues part of this to the forefront, and that's what's helped Ted Cruz a lot.
You brought up a point because, and we asked this question to Congressman O'Rourke about, going negative, if you will. And we saw this at the second debate. He really went after Ted Cruz, really for the first time.
Right.
And then, boom, a slew of ads, the next day, boom, went right out and going after Cruz's positions, which is something that Cruz had been doing for weeks. I mean, after Labor Day, Cruz had been running ads attacking O'Rourke's positions that were going unanswered. And we had asked Congressman O'Rourke, why don't you go negative? And he said he didn't want to have to do that. And then when we saw the switch, obviously that made a lot of headlines. And so I'm wondering, was this a mistake? Because the congressman has said repeatedly he doesn't use consultants. My question is, should you? Because they know what they're doing, right? I mean,
I'll tell you, the reason why any candidate uses negative ads is because they have to. That's why they do it.
But they work too, don't they?
And they work. Right.
work.
So, but you have to do it because they work and they're effective. So, for instance, Ted Cruz was using them because he had to. He needed to. Beto was doing better than he should be doing in a state like Texas. Ted was not doing well enough where, I mean, he should have been doing better. So that Ted Cruz had to do that. He had to start to define Beto O'Rourke, as we had discussed. And Beto, of course, had to fire back because he saw in his own internal polling or in other polling that he was watching that his numbers were going down, which is what happens when you're attacked with negative ads and don't fire back at your opposition. So he had to do that.
But
Deborah.
I'm going to tell you, I wish I were here.
You're feeling the energy. That's
Yes,
what you're feeling.
I wish I were here on election night because, and unfortunately I
That's a
can't
Willie
be
Nelson concert
because,
smoking something.
yeah, me and Willie will go somewhere.
I believe
But here's the deal. I keep telling Brian and I keep telling you, this is likely voters. I'll give you money right now.
Okay.
Likely voters, we lose. But likely voters aren't going to the polls. And that's what you have to worry about in Dallas County, because you've got a DA who's trying like heck to hold on to her job, and she's not going to, because Democrats are going to the polls in droves. We have Tarrant County that's going to be purple. It may be blue. We may look out and get blue, but the enthusiasm is high, and a lot of people who are going to the polls are people that are going in there to vote for Democrats.
So let me ask, go ahead, Rick.
No, I don't even know where to start with all this.
Your fan club's listening, so make it good. Make it good.
Francine, yes, yeah.
No, there are so many aspects of this. 56% of the Democratic Party say they are socialist. That's in some recent poll that I read.
Goodness. Oh, where'd you get it?
gosh.
You're an engineer. Where would you get that from? Okay.
I'm
I have to
talking.
give you a hard time. Okay.
But there was a poll that was done that said there's something like that, and I don't remember where I read it, but I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. But with that kind of a message, you've got some negatives built in there. So in a way, I'm going to say I think Beto's brought his own negatives with him. He just wasn't talking about them. And all Ted Cruz is pointing out, he's anti-gun, he's anti-life, he goes down the list. Higher taxes, bigger government, Second Amendment issues, I think I already mentioned that one. Several issues like that. And all he has to do is point out those issues, and Republican voters, Texas voters across the board are going to go out and vote for him. And I think that's what the poll is showing. He's at 42%. He's where he's always been. With all the enthusiasm, with $70 million, he's right where he started. So now Cruz has raised half the money he has because while he hasn't got the celebrity endorsements, he has been going to New York for big fundraisers and California for big fundraisers.
And PACs.
And he's been getting PAC money through channels. So that's my argument is if you look at the polls and you're spending all this money and all this energy and you go from 42 to 42, that tells me that Cruz is just bringing the voters back to him that maybe thought they'd look at Beto. But I know Texans, and there's a spirit here that isn't going to allow Beto to be the senator.
Let me ask this, because in Dallas we have seen, the record turnout on early voting, but at the same time, other counties too. I was up in Denton County yesterday following the governor, and there were people in the room, and they were gung-ho, excited, and one of the state lawmakers was bragging on the people in his district for getting out the vote and having record numbers there. And so it's not, both parties are out voting, right?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Everybody's getting out the vote.
So, Karen, in Dallas County, to Deborah's point, Dallas County obviously is heavy Democrat. And a lot of people think maybe this is, because you have some Republican state lawmakers, you have Faith Johnson, who was appointed DA by the governor, and she's on TV, she's outraised the Democrat John Creuzot. And I'm wondering, my question to you is, that seems like an uphill climb in Dallas County. Pete Sessions against Colin Allred. So what is it that, what have you told, folks, you have people meeting at the parties, headquarters there. What are you telling them? And, are they responding? And even if they do, will it be enough?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, Faith Johnson is an amazing woman, an amazing candidate, and one heck of a DA. Faith Johnson's record has been, it has been incredible. I mean, her making sure that Roy Oliver you know, that happened, and just attacking the issues that people need her to attack on, and
He
keeping
was the
people.
police officer
Yes.
convicted of
The
murder.
first time since, I think, over 44 years that a police officer had been not just indicted, but is in jail for killing a black child in Dallas County. So Watkins didn't do that. Hill didn't do that. I mean, Faith was so engaged in making sure that that was done. And probably Faith Johnson is one of the first Republicans that has at her headquarters in the southern part of Dallas. People are crossing over to vote for this amazing woman, and she will win. She will continue to be the DA, which will be a wonderful thing. I mean, I've never voted for a Democrat, but if she was a Democrat, I'd vote for her. I mean, it would be she's an amazing woman, period, beyond party.
Yeah, so after she loses, she's going to come on back to the Democratic Party. So, so you'll get to vote for her. Okay.
Let me get Carol to chime in.
So we are getting out the vote, because that's what you've got to do. Letting people know the message, why these people are on the ballot, and telling their story, and then getting those people to the polls, and that's what's going to pull it over for us. And also, I wanted to say, Dallas is not a Democrat county.
What is
Right.
Dallas, right.
53-47,
Thank
so
you.
it's
still close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to be very, very red and continue very soon.
And so now you'll get
Carol.
the perspective of the Democratic county chair, and that is that Dallas County is a blue county because every elected office at the county level, aside from the one that Greg Abbott had the chance to appoint, is a Democrat. And with regard to Faith Johnson,
Who was in the seat before her? A Republican, Susan Hawk.
Who didn't last and had to quit. But Faith Johnson, I'm certainly not going to say anything negative about Faith Johnson. But what I'm going to say is Dallas is so Democrat that the Democratic Party office is getting complaints every day that Faith Johnson's workers are telling African Americans that she's a Democrat. And she's not a Democrat. But the joke's on them, because then the people go into the party polls and they vote straight Democrat, and guess what? Faith isn't there because she's not a Democrat. But there's a reason why they're telling people that she's a Democrat.
Her signs don't even say she's a Republican.
Right.
Her signs have no party affiliation on them.
That's right.
Which to me, I'm a proud Democrat. I'm proud to tell everybody I'm a Democrat. Karen's a proud Republican. She says that every day. Rich says that. If you're a Republican, say it. And she's afraid to say it.
No, I'm not going to let this go on.
No, her 4x8 say she don't have a party affiliation on them at all.
They don't.
And she is not telling people she's a Republican.
She is telling people she's a Republican. I have been to Faith's rallies. I've been to Faith's events. And I've been to her headquarters. She is saying that she's a Republican because there's not a Democrat that could do the work that she's done.
John Creuzot is excellent.
I agree.
John Creuzot,
who used to be a Republican.
John Creuzot, though, is a great candidate. But he saw the light and he came back to the Democratic Party, and he will be an amazing DA. And I don't even live in Dallas County.
And let me throw this out because Karen, who I admire very much, had a chance to talk about the qualifications of Faith Johnson. And I want to throw out that John Creuzot, as a judge, was the first judge who created diversion courts, where a first-time offender had the chance to redeem themselves. And he was primarily dealing with young African males. And it worked. And now...
African-American? And so are they no longer American now?
I'm sorry, African-American males. And every single judge practically in the criminal judge area now has a diversion court because they saw that John Creuzot started it and it worked. And so that's going great. There's some other races that I think are extremely material here. One is in Senate District 16 between Don Huff-Fines and Nathan Johnson. And the polls we've seen show Nathan Johnson ahead.
All right. Let me ask this. First, let's check in with Facebook, Aparna, and then I want to talk about President Trump.
So Judith says JFK would have been a Republican if you were here today.
I believe that.
Then we have Esmeralda Ramirez says Beto has the personality and is on point on the issues. Then we have a bunch of people who are fans now. We have Esmeralda,
probably got
also
some haters there, too.
Deborah's fan. Esmeralda's Deborah's fan. We have Amanda, Rich. You have one more fan, Amanda. And then we have Karen Newton, Go Carol. Now there's a hashtag Team Carol.
Yeah.
All right.
Hashtag now. Wow. All right.
I have a hashtag.
Okay.
A lot of people talking about their own candidates and why they should vote one way or the other.
All right. Well, Judith, Esmeralda, Amanda, and Karen, thank you so much. Appreciate you chiming in. Let's talk about President Trump. I was there in Houston at the rally last week, and
I was there also.
It was, I mean, packed.
Amazing.
I mean, it was 19,000 people. That place was filled. There were a lot of people. You know, obviously, we talked to people, the night before who were down there camping out. A lot of excitement for the president being there, and this whole discussion about Ted Cruz. You know, a lot of Democrats brought up, and I think we discussed this last time. Democrats kept bringing up Lion Ted and what President Trump, how he described Senator Cruz during the 26th presidential primary. Now he has a new name, the president does, and the president told me this during an interview last week. He now calls Ted Texas Ted. But when he came here and when he was talking to the crowd about Senator Cruz, he did specify that Senator Cruz, he said, no one has helped me more with my agenda than Senator Cruz. And so I'm wondering how, you know, we know that President Trump has excited Democrats and has really fueled Democrats to get out there. I think everybody can agree about that. But I think he's also done the same with Republicans.
Absolutely.
Has he not? I mean, not only in Texas, but in other states as well. I think we're seeing that.
We're seeing that on the ground during the election right now. There's,
so?
we wondered how many Republicans would be showing up. Are we energized? This is something I've been working on personally for 18 months since I first thought there was going to be a blue tsunami, and I tried to work that issue into our thinking as we move forward. I don't see that happening now. There is a blue wave, but there's a bigger red wave. And what we're seeing, because we're sending people over to Dallas County to help at polls and things like that, and what they're seeing at polls that we perceive sort of 50-50 is an enormous amount of Republican enthusiasm, and that's encouraging. I hope it remains. We've got to get through Election Day with that. So Republicans have to go out and vote and not leave this to others in the process, and especially in Dallas County, because there are races. I agree with, like the Huffines race is close. I've got a lot of confidence that he's gonna win that back, that same seat back. But that's one of our tough races.
Brian, let me ask you about the Trump effect, because last month we showed President Trump has always been in our polling above 50%. He was at 51% last month. Now he's at 56%. His unfavorable 41%, and undecided at 3%. So
In Texas.
In Texas, yeah. This is the Texas poll.
That's not California?
Well, it's certainly not the nation.
It may be reversed. But talk to me a little bit about, because I think Democrats are obviously, and I talked to Democrats at the bus tour, just regular folks who showed up, and asked them why they're there. And they're there because President Trump. I mean, they're also excited about Beto O'Rourke, but they also mentioned Donald Trump. And so he is a polarizing figure, even in Texas. But he's more popular here because this is Texas. The fact that he's increased since the last month, how much of an impact will that have on Cruz? Maybe not Abbott, because Abbott's already a popular figure, but all the races down ballot and the state Senate races that we've been talking about, state House races and all that.
Well, what you're seeing with our results here in Texas are the same results that you're seeing across the country. The president's approval rating has been on the rise recently, and so you're seeing that reflected here in Texas in the Texas poll as well. The president obviously has always done well here. He has recently done better. A lot of that can be the caravan. A lot of that could be Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh is really what started getting Republicans fired up, whereas Democrats were fired up prior to that. They still are. But Republicans just tended not to be as fired up, and they got fired up over the Kavanaugh event. So
is that really an equalizer?
Well, I'm not sure if it's an equalizer. That's yet to be seen. However, if you look at some of the data coming out and some of the turnout numbers, it seems to be both sides are turning out in high numbers. You aren't seeing a far, far higher Democrat number than you're seeing Republicans. You're seeing both sides turn out. And you can look at several different states and kind of look at how that's going as opposed to traditional turnout. And then this year, now it's higher for everyone all across the country. Because in some respects, this midterm has been nationalized. And there are national implications for this midterm. You have the House of Representatives in play. You have the U.S. Senate less so in play. Republicans are likely to keep control of the U.S. Senate.
Maybe pick up some.
The U.S. House is where the Republicans are likely to lose control. And so and it's just simply because Republicans have more real estate to defend. Much more of the competitive districts are Republican districts. And again, that works against Democrats in the Senate because Democrats have all the seats to defend in the Senate this cycle. So you're seeing this nationalized. I think nationalizing a race helps people like Ted Cruz, and it will help people, members of Congress. They're in more conservative districts that are in tight races because once you nationalize it, people aren't just voting for you. They're voting for Nancy Pelosi, or they're voting for whoever the Republican will be or whoever the Democrat will be as Speaker of the House. That's what they're voting for, or it's a referendum on Donald Trump, either good or bad. But certainly the president excites Republicans, and he excites Democrats.
Our time is running low, so I want to get a last word from the rest of our panel here. So we're going to start with Deborah, and then we'll work our way around. Sorry, Carol, but let's do that, and then we'll chime in with Facebook the last time. So, Deborah.
I think it's fitting that Carol has the last word. So I just think, I just think I admire Brian and the work he does as a pollster. I think that's great if you're looking at polls. I'm not looking at polls. I'm looking at what's out there on the ground. And I think that people are going to really be surprised about this election. I think Republicans think they have a lock on it. They're going to hold on to it. And they're going to be races that we're going to elect Democrats. And I just know if our people get out to vote, and that's what we're doing every day, is walking and talking to people, I'm hearing the real deal, and Tarrant County is going to see some changes, Rich. Sorry about that, but it will.
Rich?
Well, Republicans have never laid down for this. We have been working hard and focusing on this in all three aspects of the Republican Party. The Libertarian faction, the Conservative faction, and the Establishment faction are focused like a laser beam, and there's no internal fighting right now, and that tells me something's going on here. We're over in Dallas County, and we're watching what's going on there. What I'm seeing and what I'm hearing doesn't line up with what Deborah's saying, and Cruz is gonna win this race pretty handily, I think, and my expectation is as long as Republicans stay on point, stay focused, get out and vote, take your neighbor to go out and vote, we're going to win this. And they're afraid of socialism. I said 56%. They're not socialists. The
do
Gallup.
I look like a socialist
No,
to you? Okay,
no, and I like you very much.
So we
56%.
Stop using words like that you know that aren't true.
It is.
Okay.
A Gallup poll said that 56% of Democrats favored socialism and 43, I think, favored capitalism. That's a losing message, especially in Texas.
Yeah.
All right, Karen.
I say we need to get Republicans still engaged and get them to the polls and vote. So for people who haven't voted early voting ends, Friday? But Election Day is Tuesday, so go vote, take friends with you that you know understand the issues and have them vote. This will be, I think, our last year to vote straight ticket. Go out there and vote straight ticket while you can, and if you can't make it this week, show up on Tuesday. Your vote matters.
Yes.
Karen.
I agree.
Carol, sorry.
Yes, I agree with Karen's statement that your vote matters. And I first want to say hi to my fan, Karen. I really appreciate that. But I'm going to branch out into a slightly different direction and say that it's my belief that when campaigns go really negative, that means somebody's desperate. And I will say that I have never seen more antics going on in Dallas County ever before. And I discussed this with the election administrator in Dallas County who had worked in the election office before she became the election administrator. And she said it's worse than it's ever been. And we're talking about, Democrats putting out signs and the Republicans putting their sign in front of it. And it's just little things like that. I will say, though, that the best thing about the Republican Party that I have experienced this year is that the Republican County Chair and I have reached out to each other at the beginning of early voting, and we talk 3 or 4 times a day, either on the phone or by text, and we communicate and we help to resolve some of these little petty problems back and forth. And we've been successful the majority of the time.
And Missy Shorey.
Yes, and I really have appreciated Missy Shorey working with me.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's check in with Facebook and see if we have any more fans. And Aparna, go ahead.
A lot of fans.
Love that.
Yes. Hayden Sparks says Faith Johnson is an excellent district attorney and has been endorsed by the Dallas Morning News.
That's right.
Then we have, hold on one second. Jesse Sir Paradis says it's 2018 and Texas has changed to a more diverse society. And then we have, this one is a good one, Luz de la Rosa. She says, this is a great example of peaceful debates, no anger, great job panel.
Yeah, well, that's why we love the panel. It's all about the panel. It's all about the panel.
We have a panel fan.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, Luce, Jesse, and Hayden, thank you so much.
That's right. You did.
We want to
We're
thank everybody.
internalizing a lot here.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. We want to thank everybody for chiming in on Facebook today. Thank you so much. I also want to thank our great panel. As always, Brian Graham of Dixie Strategies, Deborah Peoples of the Tarrant County Democrat Party, Rich Diott, Tarrant County, formerly Republican Party, but still very much an activist, Karen Watson of the Dallas County Republican Party, and Carol Donovan from the Dallas County Democrat Party. So thank you all very much. Enjoyed the conversation. Enjoyed the conversation with everybody on Facebook. And from now, all of us here at CBS 11, I'm Jack Fink. And stay tuned. We will have more on our poll at CBS 11 at 4, 5, and 6. For all of us here, have a great afternoon.